Nora had always believed she understood Daniel completely. She thought their life was simple, peaceful, and steady. In the small home they shared on the edge of the village, everything seemed calm on the outside. Nora woke early each morning, prepared breakfast, and walked to the small shop where she worked. Daniel usually left later, saying he needed time to prepare for his day at the workshop. Their days moved gently, almost too quietly, but Nora never questioned anything. She trusted him with her whole heart. She trusted the rhythm of their life, the silence, and even the small details she sometimes found unusual but ignored because she believed trust was stronger than doubt. One evening, Nora returned home earlier than usual. Rain had fallen heavily and the roads were muddy, so her shop closed before sunset. She pushed the door open, shaking water from her hair. The house felt unusually still. Daniel was not back yet and the quietness felt heavier than normal. She started cleaning and folding the clothes that had been left undone for days. As she worked, she reached Daniel's small wooden drawer, where he kept his notebooks and work tools. She opened it to arrange things, and that was when she saw it, an envelope tucked far at the back, almost hidden under an old shirt. The envelope looked old but carefully placed, as if someone wanted it hidden but still close enough to retrieve quickly. It was not something she had ever seen before. Nora paused, holding it between her fingers. Her heart gave a slow, uncertain thump. Something inside her chest tightened. It felt strange, almost like the envelope was staring back at her, asking her to decide what to do. Her breath became shallow. She knew she should close the drawer and wait for Daniel, but curiosity and fear wrapped around her like a hand pulling her closer. She sat on the edge of the bed and looked at the envelope again. Her hands felt warm, her pulse quickening. Why would he hide something? She whispered to herself. She thought about Daniel's recent behavior. He had been quiet, distracted, sometimes distant. She had asked him many times if everything was all right, and he always smiled and said, "I'm fine, Nora. Just tired." But now, with the envelope resting in her hand, she wondered if there was more he had not told her. The rain outside grew louder. The wind pushed against the wooden window, shaking it softly. Nora swallowed hard. She slowly slid her finger under the flap of the envelope. As she opened it, the sound of the paper tearing seemed louder than anything around her. Her heart beat faster, each beat sharp and heavy. She held her breath without meaning to, afraid of what she might see inside. She pulled out a stack of papers. The first page looked official, with bold letters across the top. Her eyes moved quickly, scanning the words before she fully understood them. It was a loan agreement. A large amount of money. Far more than anything Daniel had told her about. Her eyebrows drew together in confusion. Why would he need such a large loan? And why would he hide it from her? She turned to the second page. It showed missed payments. Warnings. A stamp in red ink. Her breath caught and she pressed her hand against her chest. She felt something cold move through her body, like water leaking into a space not meant to be touched. She flipped through the rest of the papers. Every page felt heavier than the one before. Every piece of information made her stomach twist. By the time she reached the last page, her hands were slightly shaking. She placed the documents beside her and stared ahead at the wall, unable to speak or think clearly. For the first time in her marriage, Nora felt the ground shift beneath her. Trust, which had always been so easy for her, now felt fragile. She stood slowly, walked to the window and looked out at the rain. The village lights were faint, blurred by the falling water. She pressed her forehead against the cool glass. "Why didn't you tell me, Daniel?" she whispered softly. She imagined him laughing with her in their early days, holding her hands, promising honesty. Now those memories felt far away, like they belonged to someone else. The sound of the front door opening sent a sharp jolt through her. Daniel walked in, shaking off rain and humming softly. He looked relaxed, unaware of the storm growing inside the house. Nora watched him from the doorway of the bedroom, her eyes still full of the shock she carried. He looked up and smiled when he saw her. "You're home early," he said gently. But when he saw her expression, his smile faded. His eyebrows pulled together in concern. "Nora? What's wrong?" She didn't speak. She simply lifted the envelope in her hand. Daniel froze. His eyes widened slightly and she saw something in them, a flicker of fear, maybe regret. He stepped closer slowly, as if each step was heavy. The room felt full of unspoken words. The rain outside softened, but inside the house the tension grew. Nora stared at him, waiting for him to explain, to say something that made sense. Her heartbeat echoed in her ears. Daniel looked at the envelope again, then at her face. He opened his mouth as if to speak but then closed it, his shoulders dropping. In that moment, Nora understood something deeply painful. The life she believed was calm and stable was built on something she did not know. The secret in the envelope was the first piece of a truth that would soon change everything for her. She felt fear, sadness, and betrayal blend inside her like one heavy cloud. She turned her face slightly away, unable to meet his eyes any longer. Daniel reached out but did not touch her. He looked down, silent and unsure of what to say. Nora held the envelope close to her chest. The room felt colder. The trust she once gave so freely now felt shattered, and she knew nothing would ever be the same again. Nora could hardly breathe as she held the papers from the envelope. Each page carried numbers, deadlines, and terms she had never seen before. Her hands shook slightly, the edges of the paper cutting lightly into her fingers. She felt as though the floor had dropped out beneath her. Daniel's secret was heavier than she had imagined. It was not just a small mistake or a forgotten bill. It was a mountain of debt, loans taken without her knowledge, warnings she had never received, and payments overdue. Her mind raced. How long had Daniel been hiding this from her? How much money had he borrowed, and why didn't he tell her? They had always shared everything, or so she thought. For years they had planned together, saved together, and made decisions together. And now she realized that her life, their life, had been built on lies. Daniel came into the room, humming softly, unaware of the storm waiting for him. When he saw the papers in her hand, his face went pale. His eyes widened, and for the first time, Nora noticed something in him that she hadn't seen in years: fear. "Daniel, what is this?" she asked, her voice trembling but steady. She tried to control her emotions, but her chest ached and her hands were clammy. Daniel froze. His mouth opened then closed. He stepped closer, hesitant, and rubbed his hands together nervously. "Nora, he began, but the words got caught in his throat. He swallowed, then tried again. "I didn't mean for you to find out this way." Nora felt her heart twist. "Not mean for me to find out? Daniel, these papers, this debt, it's enormous. How could you hide something like this?" He looked down, avoiding her eyes. "I thought I could handle it. I thought I could fix it before it ever affected us." "Handle it? Fix it? Daniel, you dragged me into this without my knowledge. This isn't just about handling anything. You've risked everything we built together," Nora said, her voice rising slightly with the shock, hurt, and anger she tried to suppress. Daniel ran a hand through his hair. I know. I made a mistake. A huge one. But I never wanted to hurt you." Nora stared at him, breathing heavily. The room felt tight, suffocating, as if the walls themselves knew the weight of what had been revealed. She held the papers against her chest like a shield, as if doing so could protect her from the betrayal she felt. "You didn't just hurt me, Daniel. You've ruined my sense of safety, my trust, and maybe even our future." Daniel opened his mouth again but found no words that could make her understand. He had hidden the debt for months, thinking he was protecting her, thinking he was protecting them both. But now, as Nora's eyes burned into him with shock and pain, he understood that his secret had created a wall between them, taller than any he could climb. Nora's thoughts raced. She tried to imagine how this had happened. Daniel had always worked at the workshop and done small projects around the village. How had he gotten involved in such large loans? Had he been borrowing money to save something that went wrong? Had he been gambling with their life without telling her? She wanted answers, and she wanted them now. "Daniel, tell me everything. I need to know. How did it get this bad? How long have you been hiding this from me?" she demanded, her voice steady despite the shock. He sighed, looking down again. "It started about a year ago. I needed extra money for the workshop, for repairs and materials. But then I borrowed a little more and it kept growing. I didn't want you to worry, so I kept it from you. I thought I could pay it back before it became a problem. I thought I could do it alone." Nora's hands trembled. "Alone? Daniel, we're supposed to be partners. We promised to share everything. How could you think hiding this would protect us?" He looked at her, his eyes wet. "I thought I was doing the right thing. I didn't realize how much it would hurt you. I didn't want to be a burden. I wanted to solve it myself." Nora shook her head slowly. "A burden? Daniel, you've made me carry a burden I didn't even know existed. How can I ever trust you again?" He swallowed, trying to find the words. "I'll fix this. I'll pay it back. I'll do whatever it takes." Nora's chest tightened. "Do you understand that it's not just money, Daniel? It's everything. You've hidden decisions from me. You've risked our home, our life, and the people who depend on us. You've risked us." Daniel nodded, guilt written across his face. He could see it, the hurt, the disbelief, the shock. He had tried to protect her, but instead, he had destroyed her sense of stability. Nora sat down heavily on the chair. She rested her face in her hands and felt tears threaten to fall. Her mind was spinning with questions, possibilities, and fears. How deep did this secret go? Were there other loans? Were there other lies? She felt dizzy thinking about the future and whether she could ever feel safe again in a home built on hidden debts. Daniel came closer and knelt in front of her. Nora, I'll make it right. I promise. Just please, don't give up on us. Nora looked up at him, tears in her eyes. Daniel, I don't know if I can fix this. I don't know if what's broken can ever be the same. But I need time. I need to understand everything. You cannot expect forgiveness right away. He nodded slowly, understanding the weight of what he had done. He knew he had damaged more than finances. He had damaged trust, love, and the sense of partnership they had always shared. For hours they sat quietly. The storm outside had stopped, but the storm inside Nora's heart raged on. She stared at the papers, the numbers, and the warnings. She could feel the shift in her life, the uncertainty of the future pressing down on her. Daniel's secret had changed everything. By the time night came, Nora had collected herself enough to speak again. I need you to be honest with me from now on. Every detail, every number, everything. No more secrets. If we are going to get through this, it has to be together, completely together. Daniel swallowed hard. Yes, Nora. No more secrets. I'll tell you everything. I promise. Nora nodded, holding the papers tightly once more. She felt fear, but she also felt the first small spark of determination. Daniel's secret had shaken her world, but she knew she would face it. She would face the debt, the betrayal, and the uncertainty. And she would survive. The room was quiet now, and Nora felt the weight of what had been revealed settle in her mind. She looked at Daniel, who was kneeling before her, filled with remorse, and she realized that the journey ahead would be long and painful, but necessary. She could feel her life shifting like a river changing course. And she knew there was no turning back. Her world had changed and nothing would ever be the same again. Nora had spent several days trying to process the first revelation about Daniel's secret debts. She had confronted him, demanded the truth, and tried to imagine what steps she would take next. The papers still sat on the kitchen table and she often found herself staring at them, her thoughts heavy and restless. She tried to sleep, but each night she tossed and turned, imagining worst-case scenarios. How could a life they had built together crumble so quietly, so completely, without her ever noticing? Then one morning a letter arrived at their door. Nora picked it up from the mat, and at first she thought it was just more bills or a notice about Daniel's debts. But when she saw the envelope, her stomach sank. The bold letters on the front were addressed to her, not Daniel. She opened it carefully, her hands trembling. Inside she found something she could not have expected. The papers accused her of being involved in the loan Daniel had taken. They showed her signature on a financial document, her signature, but she had never seen it before. Her eyes widened and she dropped the letter onto the table. She pressed her hands to her face and felt her chest tighten. The sense of betrayal and confusion pressed down on her like a stone. She could not breathe fully for several long seconds. How can this be? She whispered to herself. I never signed this. I never even knew about it. Her mind raced. She thought about the legal consequences. She thought about her job, about her family, about friends and neighbors who might hear rumors. She knew immediately that this could ruin her reputation. And indeed it did. By the next day the news had started to spread. Someone from her workplace had received the letter, and whispers had begun circulating among her co-workers. When Nora arrived at her shop, the manager called her into the office. His face was serious and she could see the concern in his eyes. Nora, we received a notice from the bank, he said slowly, and it mentions your involvement in a loan. We need to discuss this. Nora's throat tightened. But I didn't, she started and then stopped. How could she explain that someone had forged her signature? How could she prove she had no connection to this debt? Her manager sighed. I'm sorry, Nora. Until this is cleared up, we can't keep you on staff. We have policies to protect the company, and until the situation is resolved, you're suspended. Nora felt her knees weaken. She sat down heavily on the chair in the office, holding her head in her hands. Her world, which had already been shaken by Daniel's secret, now felt as though it had collapsed entirely. She had not only been deceived by someone she loved and trusted but was now being punished for a lie she did not create. She walked home slowly, the letter clutched tightly in her hand. Rain had begun to fall again, soft at first, then heavier, and the drops struck her umbrella like small, cold reminders of her reality. Every step felt heavier than the last. By the time she reached her door, her shoulders ached from the weight of fear and despair. She unlocked the door and stepped inside silently, hoping Daniel would be home to explain more, but he wasn't. She went to the kitchen table and laid the papers down. For a moment she felt like screaming. But no sound came out. Her mind was spinning, filled with thoughts of betrayal, uncertainty, and anger. How could Daniel have hidden something like this? And worse, how could her own name be used in such a way? She felt trapped. The world she thought she knew had turned into something unfamiliar and frightening. She sank into a chair, staring at the walls of her home. The house, which had always felt safe and comforting, now seemed unfamiliar, cold, and oppressive. She felt as if the shadows in the corners were moving, reminding her of the hidden secrets that had crept into her life. She thought of the neighbors who would hear rumors, the friends who might judge her, the family who might lose trust in her. She felt small, powerless, and exposed. Daniel arrived home later that afternoon, dripping wet from the sudden downpour. He saw Nora sitting at the table, the papers spread before her, and he immediately knew. "Nora, what happened?" he asked, stepping closer. She held up the document with shaking hands. "What happened?" she repeated, her voice trembling. "This. My signature is on here, Daniel. On a loan I never signed. I never knew anything about this." Daniel's face turned pale. He ran his hands through his hair. I'm so sorry, Nora. I didn't think it would ever come to this. I never wanted you to be involved. I never wanted you to be hurt like this." Nora shook her head. "Hurt like this? Daniel, do you even understand what this means? I've lost my job. People are talking. They think I was part of your secret. My life, everything, is at risk because of your lies." He swallowed hard. I know. I'll make it right, I promise. I'll prove it wasn't your signature and we'll clear your name. I didn't know how to tell you before. I thought I could fix it myself." "You thought you could fix it yourself?" Nora repeated, her voice rising. "And in the meantime you dragged me into this mess? Daniel, how could you even think that was okay? You didn't just make a mistake. You've ruined my reputation, my job, and my peace of mind." Daniel looked down, ashamed. He had no words left. He could only see the hurt in her eyes and feel the weight of his own actions pressing down on him. He had believed keeping secrets would protect her. He had believed shielding her from the truth would spare their marriage. But now he realized how completely wrong he had been. Nora stood, pacing the small room. Her hands gripped the edge of the table, and her mind raced with anger and disbelief. She thought about calling her family, about explaining to her parents, about clearing her name publicly, but even those options felt complicated, heavy, and exhausting. How could she trust anyone with this secret? How could she even trust Daniel after everything? She finally sat back down, burying her face in her hands. Tears ran freely now, and for the first time she allowed herself to feel completely overwhelmed. She had been trapped by someone else's choices, someone she had loved and trusted. And now there was no easy way out. Daniel knelt beside her, his voice soft. "Nora, please. I'll fix this. I'll go to the bank. I'll talk to the company. I'll do everything I can to show that this isn't your fault. Please trust me just this once." Nora lifted her head, her eyes red from crying. She looked at him, seeing the desperation and regret written across his face. But trust was not something she could give lightly anymore. "Daniel, this isn't just about fixing papers or debts. You've shown me that secrets can destroy everything. How do I know there aren't more?" He sighed heavily. "There aren't, I swear. I'll be honest from now on. No more secrets. I promise." Nora nodded slowly. She wanted to believe him, but a small voice inside warned her that the journey ahead would be long. She would need to rebuild her reputation, her confidence, and her sense of safety. She would need to confront the rumors at work, face the whispers in the village, and prove that she had been innocent all along. For the rest of the evening they sat in silence, listening to the rain fall outside. Nora still felt trapped, but a tiny spark of determination grew inside her. She would fight to clear her name. Nora had spent the last few days in a haze of confusion and anger. Daniel's secret debts had pulled her into a situation she had never imagined, and now her reputation was damaged, her job lost, and her confidence shaken. The letter accusing her of involvement had hit her like a blow she could not dodge, and each time she thought about it, her chest tightened with a mixture of fear and fury. She had tried to speak to Daniel calmly, tried to understand his reasoning, but each conversation ended with more silence and awkward stares than answers. That evening she decided she could no longer wait. She needed the full truth. She could not rebuild her life or protect herself if half the story remained hidden. She found Daniel in the small living room, sitting quietly in the corner, staring at the papers scattered on the floor. The rain had stopped outside, leaving only the damp smell of earth and wet leaves drifting through the open window. Nora took a deep breath and called his name. "Daniel," she said, her voice steady but firm. "We need to talk. Now. I need to know everything, all of it. No more secrets." He looked up at her, his face pale, and nodded. I will tell you. I promise." Nora sat down opposite him, folding her hands in her lap. "Start from the beginning. I need to understand how this happened and why you thought you could hide it from me. Be honest. Do not leave anything out." Daniel took a long breath. His eyes dropped to the floor and for a moment he seemed small, almost broken. I was desperate," he began. "I thought I could handle it myself. I didn't want to worry you. I didn't want to ruin what we have. So, I made a choice. A terrible choice." Nora leaned forward slightly. "What choice?" He swallowed hard. I forged your signature. On the loan documents. I thought if I did it carefully no one would notice. I thought I could pay it back before anyone ever found out. I thought I could save us both from trouble." Nora's eyes widened. Her hands went to her face and she could feel the anger rising inside her. "You forged my signature? Daniel, you dragged me into this mess. This isn't just a mistake, Daniel. This is a betrayal. My name, my reputation, all of it tied to a lie you created." Daniel's face crumpled. I know. I realize that now. I never wanted to hurt you, Nora. I was scared. I was afraid of failing. I thought if I could fix it alone, everything would be okay. I didn't think about the consequences for you. I didn't think at all." Nora's chest heaved. She felt her hands trembling slightly as she gripped her knees. The house seemed quieter than ever, except for the soft ticking of the clock on the wall. Every second stretched, every word hung in the air, heavy with truth. She could see the shame in Daniel's eyes, the fear he felt knowing he had crossed a line that should never have been crossed. "Do you understand what this means?" she asked, her voice low but sharp. "Because of your fear and your choices, I've lost my job, my peace, and the trust of people around me. People think I am responsible for something I didn't do. And you think you can fix it with words?" Daniel shook his head. No, I know words can't fix it. I'll prove it. I'll show everyone it wasn't your fault. I'll do whatever it takes to make this right." Nora looked at him, feeling a mixture of hurt, disappointment, and exhaustion. She wanted to scream, to cry, to throw the papers across the room, but she knew that doing so would not solve anything. She had to stay calm, stay strong, and face the situation with clarity. She had to protect herself before trying to protect him or their life together. "Daniel," she said finally, her voice trembling slightly but firm, "I need proof. I need documentation. I need someone official to confirm that I did not sign these documents. I need to clear my name completely. Only then will I even think about forgiving you." He nodded, his shoulders sagging. "I'll do it, Nora. I'll contact the bank, the company, the lawyer, anyone who can help. I'll fix this. I swear I'll do everything I can." Nora exhaled slowly. She wanted to believe him. She wanted to trust him, but her mind could not yet quiet the storm inside. The thought of all the days she had been unaware of his secret, all the time she had trusted him completely, made her chest ache. She realized that rebuilding trust would take far more than promises. It would take time, action, and honesty, complete honesty. For hours they sat together quietly. Daniel explained the small steps he had already taken in secret to reduce the debt, hoping to keep it under control. He admitted every decision, every loan, every fear that had pushed him to make the wrong choice. Each confession added weight to the already heavy burden on Nora's shoulders. But slowly, amidst the anger and shock, she began to understand the depth of his fear. He had not acted out of malice, but out of panic and desperation. Still, understanding did not erase the hurt. It did not erase the fact that she had been blamed for something she had no part in. She had to find a way to reclaim her life, her reputation, and her sense of security. She would have to confront the consequences and protect herself before she could even think about forgiving Daniel fully. "Daniel," she said after a long silence, "we have a lot to fix. And I need you to understand something very clearly. This is not just about paying back money. This is about trust. This is about the choices we make and how they affect each other. I cannot let this happen again. Ever." He nodded solemnly. "I understand, Nora. I will do everything to make this right. I'll be honest about everything from now on. No more secrets, I promise." Nora felt a small flicker of relief. It was not forgiveness, far from it, but it was a start. She would face this challenge step by step, slowly reclaiming her name and her life. And perhaps in time she would find a way to forgive him. That night she stayed awake longer than usual, thinking about what had happened. She made a plan in her mind: contact the bank, hire a lawyer, clear her name officially, and take control of her own life. Daniel's mistakes could no longer control her future. She could not undo the past, but she could decide how she would move forward. By morning Nora felt stronger. The truth had been revealed. Daniel had confessed. The first step had been taken toward fixing the problem. And though the path ahead was long and uncertain, she knew she could face it. She had been hurt, but she was not broken. She would rise from this, reclaim her life, and prove to herself that no secret, no lie, and no mistake could define who she was. For the first time since discovering the secret, Nora allowed herself to feel a small sense of control. The papers still sat on the table, the letters still unopened, but she no longer felt powerless. Daniel had made a mistake, but she would not let it ruin her. She would fight for herself. She would clear her name. And she would face the future on her own terms. Her heart still carried the weight of betrayal, but she was determined to carry it with strength, not despair. The lesson was clear. Secrets could destroy trust, but courage, honesty, and determination could rebuild it. Nora would rebuild her life step by step, and no one, not even the mistakes of the person she loved most, would stop her from moving forward. Her world had shifted yet again, and though the journey ahead would be difficult, Nora was ready to walk it with her head held high and her heart strong. Nora felt the first real sense of hope in weeks when her parents, Chike and Abiola, came to her side. They had heard about the forged documents and Daniel's secret debt, and they were both angry and concerned. They hugged her tightly, assuring her she was not alone. Her younger brother, Kalu, also came by, his face filled with concern and determination. "Nora," he said softly, "we'll help you fix this. You didn't do anything wrong. We'll make sure everyone knows that." With their support, Nora contacted a lawyer, Mr. Ade, who specialized in cases of fraud and financial disputes. She explained everything carefully, showing him the letters, the forged documents, and Daniel's confession. Mr. Ade listened attentively, nodding as he examined each paper. "Nora," he said finally, "you were clearly a victim here. Forging a signature is a crime, and we can prove that you had nothing to do with these loans. We'll clear your name." For the first time since the nightmare began, Nora felt a small spark of relief. It was not immediate, and she knew the process would take time, but she felt as though the weight pressing on her shoulders had begun to lift. Over the next few weeks, she worked closely with Mr. Ade, providing statements, filling out forms, and attending meetings. Each step was tiring, but Nora felt strong, like she was reclaiming a part of herself that had been lost when Daniel's secret dragged her into trouble. Daniel tried to be helpful during this period. He offered to attend meetings with her, to contact institutions, and to explain his mistakes in person. Nora appreciated the gesture but remained cautious. She could not let him influence her decisions. She had been betrayed, and while she wanted honesty and accountability, she also needed to protect herself. "Thank you, Daniel," she said once, "but this is my responsibility now. You have to let me handle it." At the same time, Nora focused on rebuilding her professional life. Losing her job had been humiliating and frightening, but she refused to let it define her. She applied to new shops and businesses in the village, sometimes facing skepticism from people who had heard rumors. It was difficult, but she spoke clearly, calmly, and truthfully whenever anyone asked questions. Slowly, people began to trust her again. She earned small jobs, then slightly larger ones, and gradually her reputation began to recover. The process was not quick. There were days when she felt exhausted and angry, moments when she wanted to give up and retreat from everyone. She sometimes walked alone by the river, letting the water and the wind calm her thoughts. She thought about her life, about what had happened, and about what she wanted for her future. She realized that no matter how hard the last few months had been, she could choose how to move forward. She could choose strength over despair, action over fear, and independence over reliance on someone who had betrayed her trust. Her parents remained by her side throughout it all. Chike often reminded her, "Nora, this does not define you. You are stronger than this. You will rise no matter what." Abiola encouraged her to focus on her peace and her well-being first, before worrying about anyone else. Kalu brought her meals and small gifts, often leaving them on the table with a note saying, "Stay strong, big sister." Their love and care gave her courage she had not realized she still had. Daniel sought change during this time as well. He attended counseling and financial classes, trying to understand why he had made the choices that caused so much pain. He wanted to rebuild his life, and he wanted to show Nora he could be honest and responsible. But Nora knew that while change was possible for him, she could not allow her peace and stability to depend on it. She had to choose her own path first. She had to heal, regain control, and protect herself. One day Mr. Ade called her with news that lifted a huge weight from her chest. "Nora," he said, "the investigation is complete. Your name is cleared. The signatures were forged and all responsibility lies with Daniel. You are no longer associated with the loans in any way. You are free." Nora let out a deep breath, the tension leaving her body in a long exhale. She felt tears prick her eyes, but this time they were not tears of fear or anger, they were tears of relief and a sense of victory. After months of uncertainty, shame, and worry, she was finally free. She went to her parents' house to share the news. They embraced her tightly, tears of joy running down their faces. "You did it, Nora," Shaikh said. "You stood strong through everything." Abiola kissed her forehead. "We knew you could, my child. We never doubted you." Kalu jumped up and down with excitement. "You're amazing, Nora. You did it." Over the following months, Nora's life began to take a steadier rhythm. She found a new job at a small boutique in the village, where the owner valued her honesty and dedication. She worked hard, learning new skills and gaining confidence with each passing day. Slowly, the whispers from neighbors faded, replaced by respect for the woman who had faced a difficult situation with courage and determination. Though Daniel had sought to rebuild his own life, Nora maintained a careful distance. She interacted with him when necessary, but she made it clear that her peace came first. She had learned a hard lesson. Her happiness and safety could not be entrusted to someone who had once betrayed her. She had to protect herself first, and then decide how or if she wanted to let anyone back into her life. Nora spent evenings reflecting on everything that had happened. She realized that while Daniel's secret had almost ruined her, it had also taught her strength. She had faced betrayal, fear, and uncertainty, and she had survived. She had not only survived, she had reclaimed her life, her reputation, and her confidence. She understood now that life could be unpredictable, and that people could make mistakes, but her own resilience and choices would always be her greatest tools. With each passing day, Nora felt stronger, wiser, and more independent. She focused on her work, her family, and her own dreams. She began to enjoy small things again, walking through the village market, helping friends, and even spending quiet evenings with her parents and Kalu. She felt lighter, as if the burden of Daniel's secret had finally been lifted from her shoulders. Nora also became a source of inspiration for others. Friends and neighbors who had once whispered and doubted her, now admired her determination. They saw a woman who had faced deception and betrayal, yet refused to be broken. She shared her story quietly with a few trusted friends, emphasizing the importance of honesty, courage, and self-belief. Her experience reminded everyone that even in the darkest moments, it was possible to rise, rebuild, and reclaim one's life. Over time, Nora found herself smiling more often. She walked with confidence, carried herself with dignity, and made decisions with clarity. She had been tested in ways she could not have imagined, but she had emerged stronger. She no longer felt trapped by someone else's choices. She had faced the storm and she had survived it. Daniel, though he continued to seek change, was no longer at the center of her life. She allowed him the opportunity to demonstrate honesty, but she prioritized her own growth and peace. She had learned that forgiveness and trust take time, and that sometimes the best path forward is to focus on one's own strength first. Nora's life gradually returned to a sense of normalcy, but she carried the lessons of the past with her. She was careful, thoughtful, and strong. She no longer took safety, honesty, or trust for granted. Every day she worked hard to build a life that belonged entirely to her, free from secrets and lies. Eventually, Nora looked back at the months of struggle with clarity. She could see how far she had come, from shock and betrayal to freedom and strength. The journey had been painful, but it had shaped her into a wiser, more capable person. She had learned that no matter what challenges life threw at her, she could face them, survive, and thrive. One sunny morning, Nora walked through the village, smiling at neighbors and greeting friends. She felt a sense of peace she had not known in months. Her life was hers again. She had faced deception, fear, and uncertainty, and she had emerged victorious. She had reclaimed her name, her confidence, and her future. And for the first time in a long while she felt fully free. Nora knew that life would continue to bring challenges, but she also knew that she was stronger than anything that could come her way. With determination, patience, and courage, she had rebuilt what had almost been ruined. Her past would always be a part of her story, but it would not define her. She would continue forward, wiser, stronger, and with her own heart finally at peace.